Greetings, Mark Goering here, publisher of The Sun, and today my guest is Matthew Emerson. He is a Democratic candidate for the 1st Congressional race, and we'll talk about all the candidates, and it's a full field, but until then, let's talk about you, Matthew. How you doing?
Excellent. I'm very honored to be here today and sit down and talk with you and discuss my views.
All right, so why don't we start with, because you're the only local candidate, so a little bit of history. You're a Kennett grad, right?
Indeed, 2008, I was from the first graduating class of the new school that was built.
So you must be 35 or 36.
Well, do I look it? That's
No.
the first question. Yeah, I'm 36.
You're 36.
I turned 37 on Election Day.
Yeah, because I know that my son graduated the year after that, so I know how old he is.
What is your son's name?
Brett Goering.
Okay, yeah. All right, that seems familiar.
So, okay, so you were born here. Your mom actually had a shop downtown, and we were talking before the show, and she's doing fine.
She is indeed. You know, she's running some health issues that many people in our community are, with a knee replacement and a hip replacement. So she's been rehabbing with that. I've been helping her to get her out and taking advantage of all the things in the valley.
And so, short history, you went to Kennett. You went to college, right? I saw you went to Chatham College, I guess. And here you are. So what are you doing now? What are you doing now for a living?
Well, let me rewind it back a little bit.
Okay.
So I originally went to college at Bay State College. I actually talk about this in the memoir I had written. And I had gone to Bay State College, kind of like many people when they first go to school, their priorities aren't straight.
Yeah.
You know, and at that time in my life, I didn't have the full value of education and see how vital it is to upward mobility. So in that time, I initially had struggled and failed in school. Then I hiked the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. That was really my character building expenditure, you could call it. And after that, that's when I kind of had the renewed confidence to then go back to school. And then I went to Chatham University and got my degree in political science.
Cool. And do you have a day job now?
Yeah, for the past few years, I've been a personal trainer, you know, working directly with people to try and stop the long-term, like the knee replacement, like the hip replacement. Those are things that are completely preventable. And as well as, you know, there's an epidemic of diabetes in our country and obesity. And these are all things that if people are given the tools and the motivation and the education, they can act upon them and have lower healthcare costs down the line and higher quality of life. You know, it's very, I always wanted to make a difference in people's lives, and I found when you're directly working with people and listening to their concerns, you can give them the best possible service and help them reach their
I mean,
goals.
we're going to talk about the issues and candidates, but since you are in the health field, I mean, what do you, in your experience with your clients with health insurance, what do you see the big issues are?
Well, I see that our insurance company, our insurance industry and the healthcare industry as a whole is really geared towards managed care. You know, what I see is, you know, I was training people. Of course, that's part of it, training in the gym, but it's also your diet. What are you eating? It's also how are you sleeping? Certainly those things. One of the things in our society you'll see is Pete Hegseth rolled out this testosterone program, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's nothing but a gift to the insurance company. Why? Well, you know, Mark, if you were to go on that, yeah, it would improve your quality of life. It could. But it also comes with an assortment of health risks that you'll then be on. That's something you'll then be on for life. You know, similar to if you incurred diabetes and you had to be on insulin. So that would then incur a greater cost because you have to take something to mitigate something else. Once you start messing with your hormones, similar to a car, you mess with one thing, it's going to start affecting other things. You know, and on top of that, as I mentioned earlier, obesity being a big problem in our society, last I just read, about 40% of our population, roughly, is taking Ozempic. Now, Ozempic is a diabetes medication, but it also has an effective use in weight loss. The issue is that it will then eat away at muscle tissue.
Right.
When it does that, that's what then you lose weight. You still have the visceral fat there, what it concentrates in your gut, where you can look skinny, but you're actually not in shape. Think of Bernie Sanders when he had the stent in his heart. So in working in it directly in that, you know, my experience, I found that, you know, there's a lot of waste when I think of that testosterone program. Why I call that a boon? It's because it's not needed. And we won World War II without having to give people testosterone.
Well, particularly in the Hegseth thing seems particularly crazy because old guys take having low T is a condition. I mean, there are people that just have, you're just off the chart, like diabetes, and you take it, but usually it's people my age, not a 30-year-old. I mean, that's the height of your testosterone, pretty close for guys.
Well, yeah, that, and plus it's a range. It's
Right.
from 300 to 800,
Right.
and everybody is different. That's the
So
the
we
thing.
get-
And you can, one of the other things, you can then be infertile from it.
Yeah, that
So,
and it shrinks,
you know,
and it
all
shrinks
these
certain
things.
parts of your body too, I guess. But
And you know more than me.
so the, but in healthcare, I mean, is the premium part, and we know that the Obamacare, like since the extra subsidies lapsed last January, like a couple million people are now off the Obamacare plan that they originally were. So to me, there's always the premium side, which doesn't affect the cost of healthcare, because the cost of healthcare happens regardless who pays for it. So in your experience, and I think you're a Medicare for all, are you a,
Well, I'm for universal health care. I'm for a public option.
okay.
I think that the immediate implementation of Medicare for all would be too destabilizing to our system that we already have in place. I also think that people want to have access to insurance. I don't think that we should go to a single-tiered system. I want everyone to have the ability to go to the doctor, and it's imperative that people aren't going to the emergency room.
Right.
From the cost of healthcare, many people will ignore illnesses they have because they have to work.
Now, do you think when you say a public option, so that means that you just have an option. You can go to your own insurance, private insurance companies, obviously millions of people do now, or you'd get this public option, which would be what? Which would be like a Medicare or Medicaid, regardless. How does that work?
Well, essentially, it would be like price controls, where the government would have, and similar to how they're negotiating with different drugs, insulin to name one of them, so would peg a certain price and standard of care that would then have a precedent within the market, where it would make market forces respond to what people actually need, and I believe that with more competition, it would lead to better outcomes and better prices. That's one of the rudiments of capitalism, is choice.
And this is really not so much about policy as it is, I'm only asking this because of your experience in healthcare, but it strikes me as that, and you kind of touched on it, is that preventive care. Like now, people go to the doctors, they're overweight, generally you get a pill, whether it's Ozempic, but in the old days, it's always like, okay, treating something, but I don't know if you can put a percentage to it, but how much healthier do you think our country could be if all this, way more energy went into doing the things before you get sick? I mean, really lifestyle stuff. And do you think there'd be, like I always thought that, hey, if you smoke, your premium should be higher.
Oh, I completely agree.
If you choose to smoke cigarettes, guess what? You're going to be in the hospital. You should pay a higher premium. What do you think about I guess the global question is, how can we get healthier? I mean, is it more treatment or is it more preventive care?
Well, it's both. I think that,
Yeah.
and underlying that is education.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody's body is different. Genetics plays a massive role in it. We're all born with a different metabolism, and how we interpret foods. Some people are, I think in my own life, when I stopped drinking milk, well, that enzyme's now gone, where then that had different effects on my own body. And so I see that with many people, where you'll have a wide swath of a diet. Some of them are good. I think of like the DASH diet in order to lower hypertension, lower sodium. Because obviously heart disease is, I believe, the number one killer in our country. So certainly education, but at the same time, it is looking long term. When you take charge of your health, when you're paying attention to the foods you're eating, the foods you're putting in your body, how much you're sleeping, well, you prioritize it. That then makes it a part of kind of your lifestyle, who you are. And I think that needs to be more so pushed in our society. Oftentimes they'll look at the Scandinavian countries, whether it's Denmark or whatnot. Well, of course, they have universal health care. They're also a healthier society than we are.
Right.
Of course, I want universal health care, but I think it's very important that it is sustainable and not going to bankrupt our country. Everybody wants everybody else to have health care. And you touched on it, I don't want to pay for you if all you're going to do is smoke cigarettes.
Right. Yeah.
And if you do, there should be an incentive not to.
Okay, so we could talk about health stuff all day because everybody loves that, but on the politics, so why? Why? Why are you running? You're running for Congress. You're not running for selectman. You're not running for state rep. It's a pretty high target right off the bat.
Well, I see in our country right now, there's a tremendous opportunity. President Trump is a person who doesn't have an ideology. I think that this is somebody, I'm surprised the Democrats haven't done it. This is someone you can work with if you don't care who takes the credit. People are too concerned that, yeah, he puts his name on things. Well, if he puts his name on it, but everybody gets health care, I don't really care. That's something we could change later. People have so many issues in the immediate that are being neglected. Like I think of even at the forum we're at, I believe it was Bill Coleman, he spoke of it, maybe other people spoke on it. They're like, well, in these next 2 years, well, there's nothing we'll be able to get done. Like, we need to be looking towards 2028. And I think to myself, like, well, people have problems right now. Why would we wait till then? This is somebody you can work with if you understand, like, okay, this is an ego-driven individual, but he isn't someone who has such entrenched principles that he's not fluid in what he'll go along with. And I think we need to take advantage of that.
So what are your, I mean, just in a nutshell, because there are lots of issues, but what are your major issues that you'd be interested in if you were congressperson?
Accountability. I think that accountability is an understatement to say it's lacking in our country. I think that people have lost faith so much in government that, I can understand their animosity. When I'm out on the campaign trail, oftentimes people, they say all they do is care about enriching themselves, and and nothing ever gets done, and they always talk about the same things for years. And I think to myself, like, well, it's because we have the same people in power. They go to the same schools, they come from the same places, and they have the same ideas. One of the beauties of the internet and YouTube is, at least for me, you have the ability to look at old news programs. One of the things I love to watch is Firing Line. Why? I might not agree with William F. Buckley on everything, but he's an educated individual who will show you every side of the issue in a way that you can understand it. And I think that is thoroughly lacking. People, in how they digest news is through a curated lens, and that's kind of how they see the world in many ways. And I think that we need to get away from that and have a more pragmatic society that's focused on progress.
So how does that translate into you being a congressman, though?
Well, first it's what is the role of a congressman? And that is to represent the 700,000 people in this district and look out for their best interests. And right now, I believe that we are underrepresented, and the best way to do that is to not have moneyed interests. And when you go to Congress, oftentimes, I don't know if people know this, they spend the majority of their time, upwards of 30 hours a week, dialing for dollars. Right. And I think that is counterproductive, to say the least. So one of the things I'll do is not that. I'll be spending all my time for my constituents and no one else.
Now, you talk about dialing for dollars, but one of the unique, I've never heard this, but you're not taking any donations. Is that true?
No, sir.
No, sir, that's not
no
true?
Donations.
No, sir, you're
not taking any donations.
Okay, so you started...
I put my own money up to it.
Okay, so I think you started with $5,000. That's your money.
Yep.
Is it your money?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so how, practically speaking, it's great to be idealistic about not taking money and being, being owned by the man, but literally, how can you get the word out with, like, I can see not taking corporate money, PAC money, blah, 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 but not taking any money?
Well, it takes a lot of effort, to say the least. But there's also a mechanism in place to make it possible. It doesn't cost $70,000 to get the voter list. You can get it for free from each town.
Right.
So I'm able to knock on all these doors. I'm able to go to the big community meetings. I go everywhere where people are. Some of my opponents, they only go where they're invited. I go where people are because I need to listen to their concerns and better advocate for them. The way to get around the massive amount of money that other people raise is to use every mechanism in place, and I think of myself, I use my own creative ingenuity to do it. If you want to fight for the position and really get money out of politics, you'll find a way to do it, and that's how I see it.
Now, Maine has a public finance system, as you know, sort of, and you qualify and then you get money from the state. And would you support that?
Absolutely. What I want to see is 100% public financing of elections.
Okay, well, that takes care of that. I mean, I think it seems fair enough. I know a couple people who are running over there, and you have to qualify. You get a certain number of people to donate a certain amount, small amounts, just to show that you're a credible candidate, and then state funds it.
Well, money doesn't make you credible.
No, it doesn't. But you got to have a measurement somehow, and that's our country's a lot about that measurement for sure.
Well, I think one of the mistakes we have in our country is that we equate affluence with intelligence, and that's not always the case.
Nope. Okay, now, if you seem like such a nice guy, and I know you are a nice guy, but if you watch your YouTube, People should Google Matthew, and he's got a YouTube, like this 10-minute YouTube. And I think did you film that out here in North Conway? Is that the gazebo where it is?
I filmed it actually in Barrington.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right by across the street from an AFW.
Okay. Anyway, it's really well done. I have to admit, and we have a letter in the, you submitted a letter that actually I think it's going to be in Saturday's paper. And
Everybody read that. It's very well written.
No, it's very well written. Do you use AI or you just write that yourself? I mean, it's pretty well, I mean, you're well spoken, man, but it's, I have to say.
Mark, I've written a memoir.
Okay, but it's, if you don't do well in politics, you should get into PR or you get into writing because you have a gift. I will say that.
It's very interesting to me, AI can't supplement creativity. That comes from human.
No, but it can fix syntax.
Well, it can fix grammar. I have an issue with that. And punctuation, those little things. But I see it as a helpful tool in that regard. But as far as my message and the speeches and everything I write, that all comes from in-house.
Yeah. So obviously you have an issue with the Republicans and President Trump, but you also have an issue with your other 7 people in the Democratic primary, right? And you kind of, I mean, it's pretty damn creative, I will say, but Stephanie Shaheen is the, everybody knows Stephanie. You call her the Nepo baby queen.
Nepo baby queen.
Nepo. It's called Nepo, not Nepo? Nepo.
Well, it's nepotism is the best word.
Right, okay, got it. And Maura Sullivan, and those 2 are really the top candidates who for now, as the most name recognition. She's got the most money, actually.
So well, she goes through it.
Yeah, she's spending a ton. And you say more is more problems. And then Carly Benoit, who's the smart kid from, not kid, but smart woman from Harvard. You call her the ambassador of Harvard bubble. And then Sarah Chedinsky, who doesn't live in the district. And I think your thing was, well, where do you live, Sarah? And then Heath Howard, who's the young kid. You call him the Beamer baby. I guess he drives around a BMW, does he? I don't know that. And then Christian Urrutia, you say he's the Airbnb baby because he...
Airbnb boy.
Boy.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. So because he worked for Airbnb, or did, or does, or whatever.
Did, does, who knows? Yeah, you don't know if you get the straight answer.
Yeah. So why is it, I guess you do, I mean, you're competing against these people, but do you think you're burning any bridges by really leveling some pretty harsh criticism against these people?
Well, if they can't handle that, how are they supposed to handle D.C.? These people all call themselves fighters. If that is too much for you, then I don't see how you could possibly think that you have any right to be elected.
Okay, so let me put it another way. I mean, literally, because it's an open seat. We know Chris Pappas is running for the Senate, so it's open on both. It's an open seat, and there are lots of Republicans and there are lots of Democrats. But all these people, I would think policy-wise, you probably agree with most of what they say.
Relatively speaking, yes.
Right. So, and personality-wise and background-wise, I mean, you couldn't ask for a wider group of people, right? So, to criticize them all.
Well, I mean, equal opportunity. They should be happy I criticize them. If I didn't, that means they have no shot.
Yeah. So what is the plan? You've got, you're out there every day?
Indeedy.
All right. And what are you hearing that voters in New Hampshire, in this district anyway, are telling you?
What I'm hearing is people are hard-pressed for housing. That is the number one thing that I'm hearing constantly. Just yesterday, I was speaking with a young lady, and she was saying, man, I've been renting and rent keeps going up and I have no opportunity to buy anything. And, more and more people can't work here because they have nowhere to live.
Right.
And we're suffering the consequences of that shortage and the lack of housing supply.
But how does that, and housing's a big topic too, and the state is trying to do a few things, which is controversial in itself, because anytime the state passes a law, then the local municipalities say, wait a minute, we want control. We don't want people telling us we have to have ADUs here. Or I think one of them is you can build 1,000 feet in, without a town road and all that kind of stuff. So, and on the national level, I think it did pass. There was a House bill that passed the House and Senate, and Trump tried to hold it up because he wanted a SAVE Act, but then he just didn't sign it. So it went into, I think it's going into law. I mean, okay. Magically, because one congressperson is not going to change the world, at least in the first term. Magically, what do you think is the solution to housing? Is it more federal, more government involvement, or free market or free market?
Well, I'd say it's a little bit of both. You need to give incentives to the builder. Somebody has to build these things. You need to have the infrastructure in place. We're talking the water, the sewage, those things need to be there. We also need to have jobs that you'll then be able to sustain a home when you have that. I see everything is interconnected in a way, but to really just zero in on the housing, it is the need to make it financially in the best interest to build affordable housing. Oftentimes when I talk to builders, like, well, I'm just going to build what makes money.
Right.
And I can understand that. Like, all right, well, I need to get you an incentive to build what people actually need. And the other part, and I was just talking to another gentleman yesterday, he's like, well, say I want to get a trailer. That's what I can afford. But then there's a stigma, like I'm, downtrodden and people will look down on me. So then I think in that way, I'm like, well, that's the society, issue
right.
where, people need to feel good about what they have, and certainly not be ashamed of it. It's like, if that's what you can afford, that's what you can afford. There's nothing wrong with that. At least it's your own. What I really want is people to own their own things and not be dependent on government. I think that government should be a feature to, aid and incentivize and do what you can't do for yourself and what greatly helps the society as a whole. But we need to really, people, and I believe it's a tradition up here in the North Country, that people are self-reliant, that they want to do as much for themselves as possible, that they don't want someone to give them the job, they want to make a job. And I think that...
well, how much does government, housing is complicated, and I think the new housing bill that the federal Congress passed had a special something for manufactured housing, which is sort of trailers, right? So I don't know what it is, but they're something to do more incentives. But it is complicated, and I was just reading a report about how, one is you could say, well, geez, we need less regulation. Even in small towns like Conway, people could say, well, we don't need the granite curbing or whatever. But then, this I thought was pretty interesting is that, we have like 300,000 fewer construction workers in the trades now than before COVID. Because once COVID hit, a bunch of people my age said, screw it, I'm out, I'm done, work went away, I'll just retire. But nobody's filling the gap. Mostly in places like California, it's like 70%, 80% of the workers who do like sheetrock and roofs are immigrants. First generation, not even first generation. So I guess what I'm asking is, I'm trying to get at you is how much should the government should be involved? In training programs for trades?
Absolutely. That is, we need to look towards the future. Obviously, in the immediate, there's issue, but we have to fully fund trade schools. We need carpenters, you need electricians, you need plumbers. Not only are they going to help in building homes, they're going to start businesses, they're going to have apprentices. All these are jobs that help and sustain a community that we need to give the respect to. I think that's very important.
So, okay, housing's number one. What else are you hearing out there? Is healthcare still a thing? That was a big scare 6 months ago. I know people here, I'm on Medicare, so I don't fit that anymore, but the premiums went up, and we pay, our employer. So boom, it went up. But it seems like it's sort of like everybody got used to pizzas costing $24 instead of $14. You think people are just used to the higher premiums, or what are you hearing about healthcare?
Well, certainly people are scared of what's happening. I was talking to a woman yesterday who was scared that they're like, well, how am I going to get, my like women's health care, Planned Parenthood? Like they're cutting this funding there. How will I have access to it, and things of that nature? People are not so much healthcare. The second thing people are really harping on, other than housing, is the Epstein list. Like,
really
relatively interesting. Where, because I talked to independents, conservatives, and of course Democrats, and that is one thing that is a through line with all of them.
Really?
They're like, there is a.
Why is that? I know it's a big issue, and it was a big issue, and certainly Trump and the Republicans made it a big issue, and all of a sudden they're not releasing everything, and all the complications that with it. But why do generally people care even now?
I think it's people want to know their representatives. Like, who are these people? I think, I think the secrecy that's surrounding it is just playing on people's worst intentions. And the fact that the government wasn't as transparent, and the fact that in other countries people are getting prosecuted.
Oh, sure.
You know, where here,
Nothing.
yeah, and you know, you think of the average person on the street. If they did half that, they'd be locked up in jail.
Right.
You know? So that's another thing where we're like, okay, well, I guess if you have money, rules don't apply to you. And that's something where, you know, we need to get back to realizing that, you know, here in America, we're a country of laws and not of money and men.
Yeah. What do you and then people talking about the war in Iran?
In a way where, you know, directly speaking, they want it over. And certainly with Israel, you know, they see an apprehension to it. Like, they're, oh, we need to stop this genocide, which I completely agree with. I also see our relationship with Israel, and for me, I want to see stability in the world. And this time, you know, when our views align with Israel's, I can certainly be with that. But when they deviate, that's why if I were in Congress, I would have voted against sending them more aid. I think that
You mean military?
Yeah, more military aid for that. Because I believe that, of course, they have a right to exist. I don't think they have a right to expand their borders and cause chaos in the region that then affects everybody else in the world.
Tough one. All right. I think we're on a 30-minute mark, which is where we kind of end the show. Anything else you'd like to say? People go to your website. How do they get involved?
Please go to electemerson.com, certainly get involved. And I look forward to seeing you out on the campaign trail. And vote September 8th.
Okay, Matthew, it's a pleasure.
It's my pleasure.
Okay,
Thank
take
you so
care.
much.